Due to some violent content, parental discretion is advised.
Good evening, and welcome to the PrinnyCast of October 27th, 2012, where we discuss the frightening, the gory, and the strange worlds of scary video games. I am your ghastly host, Archduke Christopher of the House of Counting, and I am joined by my fiendish companions, Meikenstein and Crypt Keeper Grover. And I think Angry Birds is... No, maybe it's the events of Birdemic is happening just outside the room. Anyway. Welcome to the PrinnyCast, where we're into scary games today. But first, this week we're trying something different with the video setup, so we're trying out 2 30-minute videos instead of the usual 4 15-minute ones. Let us know in the comments which you prefer, or if you'd like 3 20-minute videos, or just have the whole show in 1 hour-long piece. So what have you guys been playing this week, Grover?
Well, I've been playing quite a bit of Minecraft because the Halloween update came out.
Ooh.
I haven't got to any of the new stuff yet since all the servers are still down because fuck it's still updating. I do like the new sounds and stuff, and they seem to have changed stuff a little bit. The monsters love to dive bomb you now when you're in caves, just come out of nowhere on top of you. I also played just a crap load of Skyrim as well. I'm not done with the game, and now I'm using mods, so that's just making it even worse. Makes me want to play even more. I have also played this game called Waves, and it's a shooter game. It's a very, very weird game.
Geometry Wars, or even Asteroids.
Yeah, that's the way to put it. The last game I've been playing was Dwarfs. The game is pretty fun.
So how about you, Mike?
I've actually been playing more than just WoW this week.
Oh my god.
I got a game called Deadlight off of Steam, and it's new to Steam, but I know it was on Xbox Live Arcade before, and it's pretty interesting. Kind of goes with the horror week and stuff. They don't call the monsters in the game zombies, even though that's what they are. They call them shadows. What I really like about the game is that it's just a side-scrolling platformer kind of action game, but the background comes at you. Say, like, there's zombies in the background, they actually start to walk towards the front of the screen, and when they get up there, then they attack you. So it's not too big of an issue because mostly you're just moving forward and jumping over things, and you end up past that point unless you get to a puzzle that you just can't figure it out and you don't have to deal with them. But it was kind of a cool touch that I thought was neat.
It reminded me a lot of games like Flashback back in the day, or Out of This World.
Yeah.
Action-y, but for the most part, it's all about the atmosphere and the puzzles.
The atmosphere is really, really good. I will say the controls are not the best. I have launched myself into pits simply trying to jump straight up a countless number of times. It's pretty good, though. I mean, it's not horrible. I also played Amnesia: The Dark Descent this week. I got about 45 minutes into it. I only yelled out a couple times, so... That's only once every 20 or so minutes. It's pretty atmospheric as well. It's very scary. I have issues with games like this. I'll actually talk about why later in the show when we get past the news segment. But I did play it, so...
Well, before I get into my games, I probably need to backtrack a little bit and say special thanks to longplays.org, who's helping us with a lot of our video when we can't find certain games or we don't have certain games that we can record. They've been fantastic at letting us use a lot of their archive footage. And to galaxypugs.com, where Neil from there has actually gifted me with a copy of that Waves that Grover was talking about. So that's one of the games I've been playing this week, too. I haven't played Waves enough to set very decent scores yet, but I am starting to slowly get the hang of it. It's more about survival than it is using the actual tricks behind it so far. I've also been playing a lot of Bloons 5 on Congregate because they've had a double money weekend, and that game is just a fantastic blast for people that love tower defense games anyway.
I love Bloons.
So I've been trying to catch up with that. I just wish some of the levels didn't take so blasted long to get somewhere with. Because even the easiest of the shortest levels can still take 30 minutes to play through a round. And I also had a nice little multiplayer game of Guns of Icarus, which I've mentioned before. And that went pretty well considering my internet connection. There was just a little bit of lag at first, but it ironed out and we blew up a lot of airships. Other than that, I haven't been playing a whole lot. Not even the new Minecraft update. No Counter-Strike. It's been weird.
No Counter-Strike? Seriously?
Spooky.
And here's some game news. Man vs. Dinosaur Arena shooter Primal Carnage. There's been a lot of people that's been excited about this. Will finally be out October 29th for $15, which is tomorrow from the Monday that we upload. And Xbox's version of Minecraft has sold over 4 million copies since its release in May, and most recently, in the week of October the 15th, it was the most played game on Xbox Live, surpassing even the unbeatable Call of Duty all week long.
Wow. I always wonder if Minecraft is going to reach their peak, and they still haven't reached it, and it's been over 2 years now. It just keeps getting more and more popular.
More and more updates.
That's true. This week I think I spent 12 hours building a castle that I haven't even got 50% complete.
Yep. Speaking of building things, Square Enix picked up the license for the brand spanking new Unreal Engine 4, where Epic was saying it's going to be used in more than just a couple of Square Enix's soon-to-be-released titles. Square also mentions, however, it's going to be a supplement to its own Luminous Studio engine and not a replacement for it. GameStop Kids stores opens up in 80 locations around the country, mostly in malls, from what I understand. And it's going to have a range of games and accessories befitting more of a E-for-everyone crowd. So expect a lot of Minecraft, a lot of Lego, a lot of Star Wars, that kind of thing. Kind of like a video game version of the Disney store. That's what I got out of it.
Well, I always kind of thought we needed some kind of video game toy store out here because there's a lot of stuff that we don't get, so it'll be nice.
Maybe it'll be easier for people for Christmas.
That's very true.
However, on the other side of the tracks, we've got poor little Zynga, who shows up in just about every one of these casts, who's reporting to be releasing a 5% of the total workforce is going to be ousted. That's about 150 full-time workers, not including any of the part-time or contracted employees that may be also going with this outage. And it's because of its admitted losses in the third quarter of 2012, totaling nearly $53 million. However, before you go, well, I saw that coming, no, it's not because they're doing poorly. They're actually $10 million ahead of where they were last year. But it's all the cost from these really strange and weird business deals that they've been doing lately, and it's starting to come back to bite them.
Put off more than they could chew, eh?
I don't know what they're doing anymore. They just seem to be trying to find their place now that they realize that the place they were going isn't going to happen.
And I understand Facebook's stock dropped even more recently, so that's not going to help them out any either. Because without Facebook, there's probably not going to be much in the way of Zynga, and vice versa.
Yeah.
But that's not the only layoffs that has happened this week. Warner Brothers subsidiary Turbine, behind some MMOs like Dungeons & Dragons Online and Lord of the Rings Online, laid off about 50 people of their staff. However, in the same week, they've hired Ken Rolston, one of the designers behind Elder Scrolls and Kingdoms of Amalur, former Mortal Kombat developer Alan Villani, Demetrius Combs of End of Nations and Rise of Immortals fame. And speaking of Zynga, one of their tech heads over there, Jai Singh, has also been hired on. And also, kind of a related thing, Vigil Games' co-founder, Joe Madureira, leaves his post, hopefully I'm saying that right, don't shoot me, left his post to pursue something hinted of a comic book career of sorts. Vigil Games is most notable for the Darksiders. And Borderlands 2, there's a character hack on the Xbox 360. There's a patch in the works, but they say to be safe, don't accept any public games with unknown players, and always save and quit using the save and quit option before shutting off the system or heading off to the dashboard. Lastly, if you should happen to be kicked to the main menu after a death, hit continue as soon as possible, and hopefully you'll be spared from this.
Also in news, last week we were talking about Star Citizen starting up their Kickstarter to get their money to make the game. Well, they've got it. As of yesterday, they have roughly $2.1 million, and they still have about 21 more days of funding to go. The game is, without a doubt, going to happen now. So if you're into that genre, get ready, because within the next couple months, you'll probably start seeing betas and stuff for it.
Kickstarter's kind of becoming the trend for a lot of indie game developers. The original Shadowgate creators have hit up Kickstarter as well to help fund a reimagining of their classic game. I'm pretty sure it was on some of the PC, like Amiga and stuff at the time, but most people have played it off the original Nintendo. However, Quest for Glory creators are also doing the same thing in Kickstarter to make a Hero U, a tactical RPG puzzly game with a quirky story presumably about a university that trains would-be future heroes of the land. SimCity's all yours.
Well, bad news for people that expected the game to come out on their birthday or in February. The game has been pushed back, because they don't want to release a buggy game. That's Maxis for you, and I like that. The new date is going to be March 5th for North America, and Europe will get the game on March 8th. As of right now, EA or Maxis have not given a reason for the delay, but most likely they found a bug or something.
And then probably the most shocking news to me of the week. G4 cancels Attack of the Show. Oh, wait for it, we're not there yet. Attack of the Show, I'm actually surprised lasted this long. But it also canceled X-Play, the last bastion of anything decent on that channel. So it makes me wonder exactly where they're going to go with that, if it's just going to be reruns of shows like Cheaters and Cops for the rest of its existence.
Most likely.
You know how I feel about X-Play.
I'm not sure what happened to X-Play. Adam Sessler sure went cynical in the last few times I've seen him. He got dark.
They were hypocritical about the humor in certain video games.
I know one in particular.
Duke Nukem Forever, they criticized the game for its childish, 80s humor, but they do the same thing on almost every show. So I don't understand where they were coming from with that. I think they just wanted to jump on that whole "it's really cool to hate Duke Nukem right now" bandwagon. So I mean, yeah, the game wasn't great, but it was.
That was the wrong thing to be judgmental on.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, judge the game for being a piece of crap, not Duke Nukem character, which I think is hilarious and always has been.
I mean, I pretty much got what I was expecting. So, yeah, I wasn't as disappointed as other people because I knew it was going to be, I was basically going to be playing a 10-year-old game. I was okay with that. So, I have some World of Warcraft updates for everybody. There's a slew of updates coming with patch 5.1, a lot of class changes, a lot of updates to older systems, but I'm not really going to go over those. I've picked 5 things that off of MMO Champion, which is where I get most of my WoW news. So if you want to see a more complete list of everything that I'm not talking about, you can find it on mmochampion.com. Pet battles, which they introduced with Miss Pandaria.
Discounting.
There are going to be new battle pets in the older raids. Originally, the example I was going to use would be Mr. Bigglesworth from Naxxramas, which is at the very beginning of that instance, when you first enter it, there's a little cat wandering around, and his name is Mr. Bigglesworth. And if you kill it, you can hear Kel'Thuzad yelling at you, because he's really upset that you killed his cat, basically. It was going to be put in the game as a drop for if you kill Kel'Thuzad, and there's a lot of different pets just like that on the older raids, and they'll usually have something to do with the raids. But they changed that particular one, and it is now an achievement reward for doing some of the older classic raids. Also, this week was supposed to see the release of Heart of Fear and Terrace of Endless Spring, both on Tuesday, and they changed it. It's just going to be, the Heart of Fear is going to be Tuesday, and then 2 weeks after that, they're going to release the Terrace of Endless Spring. Now, they're doing this staggering content because they say that there's enough content there that they think it will be difficult, and they don't want to overwhelm players with 2 raids in the same week. Also, with 5.1, there's going to be a new feature in the game called the Brawlers Guild. What it basically is sort of like a fight club kind of thing. People that have played arenas will be familiar with the setup, except that it's a PvE instead of PvP. You're going to queue to go into a fighting arena, basically, and fight an NPC. There's several different ones, and you gain reputation with the Brawlers Guild, and the more reputation you have, the neater the things that you can buy. There's no really gear for like dungeons or raids. It's all cosmetic stuff, but some of it's pretty cool. I think there's a couple pets in there.
I just have one question, though. How can you gain reputation in a fight club when, there's that whole rule?
Don't talk about Fight Club. I haven't seen the Horde ring because the video that I watched for it was an Alliance player, and that is underneath the Deep Run Tram, so it's kind of a hidden away area, and there's not too many places like that for the Horde, so I'm not really sure where they're going to put that. My guess would be somewhere in the Cleft of Shadow, or the Valley of Honor maybe. I'm not really sure. There's also an increase to the amount of Valor points being awarded for dungeon queues. When you queue up for random heroic dungeons, you get Valor points. You get a lot for the first time, and then you get a smaller amount for each subsequent queue for that day. They're increasing this amount. And then the last bit of news, and this has me excited because I have tons of these things. Each time you completed a daily quest, you get an item called a Lesser Charm of Good Fortune. These serve zero purpose in the game except to trade 90 of them in once a week for 3 greater charms of good fortune, which allows you to roll independent of everybody else for a chance to get a piece of loot that you can actually use for your current spec off of a boss. Say I'm in like my guild is rating 10 man. Let's say that we kill the 3rd boss in the dungeon, and he has a helmet that I really want. He doesn't, but let's just pretend he does. So he doesn't drop the helmet, and as soon as he dies, you get a chance to use one of your coins, and it's a window that pops up, says, would you like to roll again? So you can roll again, and it'll determine if you get either gold or just a piece of loot. So what you can do is you can use that charm, and if you win a piece of loot, it will randomly select loot off of that boss's loot table that you can actually use and put it in your inventory. So you don't have to fight other people for the loot. It's independent of everybody else. Now, what the change is that you get more than 90 of these a week if you do all of your dailies. You end up with hundreds. I probably have 600 of these things, and you can only turn in 90 a week, so obviously that's an issue for me.
Yes.
Ghostcrawler, aka Greg Street, lead developer for the systems design in the game, tweeted earlier this week that they are going to have a way to turn these into some other form of currency. That was all he said. I don't have any specifics on what kind of currency. Could be gold, could be valor, could be justice points, but it'll be something, and that's worth mentioning.
I nod at this.
And that's all I have for World of Warcraft news.
And that's our game news, but we're going to start up a new segment where we're going to showcase some lesser-known titles. Maybe not out yet, maybe we just picked them up, maybe they're a couple of months old and they're kind of unknown, but largely indie games from all sorts of platforms that we think need a little bit of highlighting and a little more love out there. It's going to be more footage going to be flashed at you than me actually telling you about them, because I think the footage would tell you a whole lot more than I possibly could. So here we've got some Symphony. And yes, that is a shooter based upon music, which is not a new idea, but this one seems to have a little something pizzazz, I don't know. And over here we have Overgrowth, which seems to be a really fantastic physics engine for how early in the system that it is. And one of the more curious titles that I've heard of recently, Legend of Nightwasher. Yes, that is a washing machine dressed up as a knight, trying to do things like whacking these other washing machine creatures.
What?
That's why I have to show it, because describing it does not do it justice. And Grover was going to talk a little bit about dwarves for us.
Dwarves? It's actually been out for, I think, about a year or so, and Dwarf is an RTS-based underground game. And it's underground because it's dwarves. The game consists of digging for loot and desperately trying not to be drowned when your idiot dwarves open up a cave that is actually an aquifer filled with water, and trying not to be burned alive when they break into a caldera. Also, in the caves can be hordes of goblins, hordes of ghouls, and bosses that will spawn both of those and send them at you. If you play the game tutorial, which you should, because if you don't, you're going to die as soon as you start playing this game, you're going to hear the voice actor, which is Simon from Yogcast. You know, everybody knows Simon. He's digging a hole.
Especially that particular voice of his. Very unique on the internet.
Very. The game is free to play. You can play it for free, and get it on Steam. Free play has campaign, arcade, and skirmish. It has other modes, but if you want those, you can pay $10. Or if you are stupid, you can buy each of the DLC separately and get it for $12.95. Why the hell would you do that when you can pay $10?
Well, unless there's just one specific mode that has an interest to you, then that makes a little more sense. But yeah, if you're going to buy them all, you might as well buy them as a package.
I didn't think about that. If you don't want all the DLC, you can buy them separately.
From what I've seen so far, I actually got it on the download. It's just a small file, but my internet, man, my internet. But I pretty much only heard about this last night anyway, and there was a bunch of other stuff to take care of. But long story short, it seems to be like a strange cross between like Lemmings and Minecraft.
Yeah, your dwarves randomly dig, and they don't have any sense of danger. You can tell them what to do, tell them which way to go, and you can make them walk straight into a lava pit if you want. You can make them walk into a hole. You can make them light TNT and hold it till it explodes.
Oh no!
Oh no!
Too much Lemmings as a child.
And that's sad about dwarves.
jump scare. Okay. So our topic this week, so it's spooky games. It is the holiday season. It's kind of fitting for that. And there is so many spooky games out there. There's been all sorts of moody and eerie and strange and scary and dark games out there. It's kind of hard to tell where to draw specific lines on this topic. So I think we're just going to kind of open our arms and just gather them all in. And my first experience with a scary game was Haunted House on the Atari 2600, where you're nothing more than a pair of eyes wandering around this maze with spiders and ghosts chasing you, and you have to find these items to get your way out.
I think I still have that game.
It's a classic. I put quite a bit of time in that one, probably almost as much as Adventure, believe it or not. But that was my first. It's hard to call it a scary game, but you will jump when you're 4 years old and a spider jumps out of a room randomly just as you're about to go through it. So yes, that will get you.
Yeah, it's true. I wasn't. I played that one when I was young, but I don't have many memories of it. The first really spooky game that I remember playing, and this is probably just because at the time it was like the best graphics you could get, and that was Silent Hill.
Silent Hill.
Yeah, not too many games before that really were scary. They relied on whether they could startle you or not. There wasn't really this amount of, I really don't want to go down this hallway. It's like, I'll go down this hallway, and if something jumps out at me, then I'll shoot it. It wasn't like that in Silent Hill. First off, the ammo was a lot more scarce than in games like Resident Evil.
Well, you weren't a soldier, you weren't a cop, you weren't some sort of ghost hunter, you were a normal person in all of the games. So while they did give you weapons up until more recent titles, you were always kind of the common man stuck in a really bizarre situation. And that ambience is what made it so creepy.
And you didn't really know where you were supposed to go either. And all of the doors in the game could be interacted with, but not all of them could be opened. I named this one first because it was one of the first games ever where not being able to go somewhere didn't frustrate me, but it relieved me. I was like, oh, thank God, I don't have to go in here. So that's why I picked that one above all of the other ones, is because it was the first game that ever gave me that feeling. 2
words for Silent Hill: Pyramid Head. That thing is the creepiest game character I can imagine.
Which is why he's continued to pop up in later incarnations of the series, even though he was supposed to remain in Silent Hill 2 for a very good reason, and I point my finger largely at the movie for popularizing him to the point of needing to be reimagined for the other games.
Yeah, I agree. He fit perfectly in Silent Hill 2. For the reasons that I'm sure you're aware of.
It's a very psychological game. Every creature in it is supposed to be a recreation of things going on in these characters' heads or their past. So having reoccurring characters kind of destroys that imagery that everything is coming out of their nightmares.
It's more like it's constant world without that context. And so it feels like it's a place that you can actually go to, and I don't think that's the way it's supposed to be.
No.
A game that I'm thinking of that I first played that kind of startled me because I was 4 when it came out was Friday the 13th on Nintendo, actually.
Yes.
That game, one being damn hard.
Oh, yes.
Just when Jason would just come out of nowhere at you suddenly. And it didn't matter whether you're in 2D mode or in the 3D mode, the generic 3D mode where you're inside the cabins trying to save the kids. When Jason appeared, it was alarming for more than the fact that he started beating your ass immediately. Jason could kill you in a matter of 2 hits if you let him. If you didn't have, what is it? I remember you started with rocks, you got knives, and did you go higher? Did you get an axe or something? I
don't recall, no.
I just remember that if Jason appeared and you didn't have a knife, at least you're dead. He's gonna kill you.
Yeah, you can sit there and dodge all day, all Punch-Out style, if you're good enough, but...
He's so fast, he moves twice as fast as the zombies in the game.
See, I didn't play that game. I was very easy to scare as a kid, so I didn't do a whole lot of the scary stuff on the NES and the SNES.
That is one of the ironic things about the Friday the 13th game, though. It was one of the early 4-player games. You could actually party game that one.
You could, yeah.
Which, anytime that you party game, which is why people's been pointing at the last 2 Resident Evil specifically, the more people you have, the less scary it gets.
Yeah, you don't feel so isolated.
And it doesn't matter if they're AI or if they're other players. But that's a conversation I'm sure we'll come back to because it's not the only games that's done that. There's been quite a few, especially movie-related scary games for the old NES. And we talked about a couple of them last week with our movie games, stuff like Jaws and Nightmare on Elm Street. It's a trend that hasn't actually stopped, but it's really slowed down. I can't think of too much between the 16-bit era's Warlock and the most recent Saw games. That's almost a 10-year gap there. Then again, horror movies have been kind of on the decline, but you'd expect them to make something like a Final Destination or a Scream or something.
Yeah.
You would think.
Well,
simply because franchise games, you know how they are.
I think they look at games like that and the movies that they would be based on and probably come to the conclusion that a lot of people that probably watch the movie wouldn't necessarily play the game.
No.
So they've already lost a number of their target audience just based off of that. I'm not saying people that watch terrible movies like Scream.
You might have made some enemies there. There's some Scream fans out there.
Scream's alright.
Yeah, I never actually saw it, so I can't really say that. I just did that to be controversial. Dun-dun-dun.
Actually, I did just suddenly remember one that was in between the Saw and Warlock, and that was The Thing, the John Carpenter's Thing, before they made the awful prequel to it. And maybe that's how more horror games should go, is kind of that isolationist feel that you never know who quite is the villain or who's the enemy, because anybody could be it. Clock Tower. So in the Clock Tower games, they really do not have you combating the enemy. You're always running away from it, trying to find either pathways to escape or hiding places.
Yeah, I've heard good things about that series, particularly Clock Tower 3, but I never played it. It was either 2 or 3. I've never played any of those games. I was always a Resident Evil / Silent Hill person. And like I said earlier, Resident Evil wasn't really scary as far as how it could mess with your mind. It basically relied more on startling factors, like the things that jump out at you.
Well, not all scary games had to be outright scary. I mean, take Castlevania, for example. It is technically a horror game series. And I don't think anybody's been scared to play it at any point.
No
matter how good the graphics got. But it's still a classic horror series. You've got basically all the Universal monster staples and then some in there. You've got Japanese horror creatures in there these days. And
for Castlevania, I always, even though I don't know if people consider it with Castlevania, Sympathy of the Night. I love that.
I like that game. I like the whole Metroidvania thing that it started.
It's one of those games that if I were ever stuck on a deserted island conversation, what games would you take? That would probably be one of them. I'd almost say the newer ones, simply because I know they're bigger and I haven't played them before, so that actually makes them more appealing to me. But at the same time, I've heard they're not as good. So
I do remember in Castlevania that in the crypts in the lower level, there is this, it's where you fight death, and it has some music that's really creepy, and actually it was a couple times where I'd be playing it, and that music would really kind of creep me out, and actually make me uneasy. But yeah, I just remember that area really creeping me the hell out. Especially, I think it was nighttime when I played it once. I was just playing in the dark, I was listening to the music, and suddenly I got really creeped and had to turn the lights on, and I was just like, oh wow, the game actually scared me.
I've had people tell me that Stalker was scary, but I've never played it. Well, I mean, I've played it, but I've never gotten really far. I've only ever put like an hour and a half at a time into it. The last time was because I left it on pause and I left my monitor on, and I guess some dust had gotten into my card and I hadn't cleaned it out. So that on top of leaving the monitor on with this somewhat graphically demanding game, because I had the settings all the way up. Because I was so happy I had this new video card and I could turn settings up, so I did on every game. But I did that and I left my monitor on and I left it on pause and I left the room for several hours. And when I came back, my graphics card was completely dead. And
that's scary.
Yeah. So that was my experience with scary. It destroyed part of my real life. The parts that I played weren't scary, but more than one person that played the game told me that later in the game you start going through darker areas and it can get really spooky.
I've heard a lot of Metro 2033 has a lot of creepy parts like that.
Yeah.
And I have both of these games, I just haven't put a lot of time on them yet.
I feel like we should mention Doom here.
Oh yeah. Doom actually did kind of creep me out in the hell levels.
Now, the original Doom, or?
Yeah, the original Doom.
Yeah, I haven't really played Doom very much.
I beat Doom.
Of them. Half-Life 2, I forget the name of the monster, but they were the ones that screamed. You remember those?
Yeah.
They ran really, really fast, and I believe
okay.
they were the face huggers that shot poison.
Yabba, my icing.
I completely forgot about it because I thought you were going to talk about Ravenholm because it was a pretty creepy stage, but I completely forgot about those little.
No, that's the one. I was playing through that level and I had died so many times that I actually had a pattern down. I would end up with one of those explosive barrels on the roof, and I was being chased by one of these things, and they can climb ladders, unlike most of the other monsters in the game. So what my strategy was, is I worked out the path that I could take to where I could almost get to the end of the area without that thing catching up to me. And so what I did was I had an explosive barrel, and then when I got to that point where it was about to catch up to me, I spun around and shot the barrel at it, and it killed it. And it was one of the coolest things I'd ever done in that game, because it worked perfectly. It was still scary. I mean, you're sitting there being chased, and you have to keep running forward, so you can't really look back, so you just kind of have to guess where he is.
But you love it when a plan comes together.
Yeah.